Okay, so I've opened up an empty room to start, okay? I've got a little bench with some vases because that's just how it came. Eventually, let's see if I've got stuff in here. Eventually, I want to have items in the room that feel like they belong. Right? So that's where we're going. Okay? This is not like a groundbreaking design, but it gives you a basis for what you can do in Photoshop. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically get rid of all of this. And in fact, I'll just work from a copy. How about we do that? Let's do that. Perfect. So I'm literally just going to delete what's in here. Okay, so first things first, this room, it feels a little small to me. So what I want to do, I'm going to make it bigger. And if we remember, if I go up to my crop tool, I can just drag, and I can decide, okay, now I've got a little bit more room context, okay? If I want this to just repeat itself, there's a couple ways to do it, right? We can copy the background and clone it. We can copy and paste it in a new layer. Because we are working with technology, this would be an example of something I will allow to use AI for, okay? But the caveat is that you can only expand or reproduce what's already there, okay? I don't want you typing in, generate a new hardwood floor, okay? That, no bueno, okay? But if I just hit expand and I hit enter, now it's going to use its little brain and it should just give me floor and wall. Hopefully. Cross our fingers. Perfect. Okay? So, like I said, that is an acceptable use of AI, but we are not generating new ideas with the AI. Okay? We're using it just to expand what's already there. Okay? The next thing I want to do, because I find this little bench and stuff, it's probably not going to go with my design, so I'm just going to hide it. And I think what I'll do, I'm going to make a copy of this layer, and I'm going to actually rasterize it. So now it's all these pixels are attached to each other, and the AI is sort of like committed to the background. I'm going to select, let's see if I can select subject. Let's see if it'll let me. Yeah, see, it didn't do a great job, but what I can do is I can just sort of boop, 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 paint over it, including the shadow, okay? And I can go over here to the little Band-Aid. I can click remove. And let's see if it will let me. Repaint it. Remove. It really didn't want to do that, eh? That's funny. Huh. See, and again, sometimes we just have to do it old school, okay? Which is fine. So I'll select it. Maybe I'll paint over it with a mask. Go to this little mask. Here we go. B. Okay. I've got a mask. Okay, so let's remember this quick mask is not to be confused with a layer mask. Okay, so quick mask over here in my toolbar, this little rectangle with the circle, that's what we use when we are selecting. The quick mask is just for selecting. So if I wanted to go in and get really precise, I can use the quick mask to do that. Right? I can add it in, or I can take it away, right? Just by painting, okay? Turn the quick mask off, and now the marching ants means it's selected. But if I take my brush, boop, 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 and I paint, right now, my quick mask, or sorry, my regular mask, or my selection rather, is inverted, right? So I want to change what's inside this. So I can just hit Control-Shift-I, and now just this is highlighted. Okay. I know what's going on here. That's fine. If I turn both these off, you can see. So that's why it wouldn't delete that thing, because we just committed the background. That generative fill. Okay. So if I turn this mask off, there it is. Okay. Cool. So just for fun, let's take our clone tool. And if we remember, our clone is something we use when we want to duplicate pixels exactly, okay? So I always need to create a source point. So this little clone stamp here, right? We make sure we're on clone. I hit Option, or I believe it's Alt, whatever key on Windows that makes this little bullseye show up. Now I'm defining the source, okay? And then wherever I paint, it's gonna copy, okay? But that's really sharp. Those edges are too sharp. So I think I'm gonna actually fuzz them out a bit by making my brush fluffier. And I can do that here with the hardness. And I can just sort of clone them out this way. Okay? And right now it's relative to my background. Boop. Okay. Okay, so I still have a hard edge here. So I can just play. And again, part of that is because of the layer. If I look here, this generative expand is giving me a weird outline, but that's okay. Okay, so let's say I want to continue this floor line. I can just click it. Oops, make sure I'm on the right layer. And see, wherever I drag, if I copy it like this, it'll just make it the same. Okay, so play with that. if you find that the remove tool gives you grief, okay? But because we know what happened, I'm going to make a copy. And I'm gonna just boop, 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 boop. Right? And again, I want to teach you all these things so that you can decide which tool to use for which task. Because sometimes the one that you think is going to be the best isn't the best, right? Like this, I'm using AI to like remove something when I could literally just go in here and I could either clone it out or I could heal using the spot healing brush, and I could just literally paint over it and it'll just do it for me, right? Like it's a better use of the tool. Okay, so all that being said, now we have a plain room. Let's bring an asset in and change the color of it. So I'm gonna go into my little catalog here. Let's go into my libraries and some of the stock I was playing with before. Let's bring our curved couch in. Okay, so we worked with this last week. We changed the color. This is not the right file, sorry. Here we go. Is this the right one? I really want it to show me the file name. Stock. Where did we go? Let's go into working files. There we go. Okay. That's better. We want our Photoshop file, not our PNG. Okay. So my Photoshop file here, okay, this is where we started, right? And we've got ourselves now this nice green couch. Let's refresh how to do it. Okay, so I've got my stock image that I want to use, whether it's downloaded from a furniture store or a inspiration, stock imagery. I want to use this in my design. First things first, sorry. I'm always going to make a copy of my background, okay? I can Control J, and that'll give me a nice duplicate. And I'm going to call this, let's make it orange today instead of green so we don't get confused. Orange couch, okay? And what I'll do, I will hide this group, okay? And I'll turn this background off so that we don't get confused. So, like I said, depending on the needs of your end result, will determine what tools you use. For this one, I'm just going to remove the background with one click, and it's going to apply a layer mask to my image here. And then I can go in and I can refine it. So always making sure that you have the mask selected when you go in to refine the edge. Otherwise, anything that you do on this layer, let's say I have a paintbrush, right? That's going to actually change the pixels of that layer, not the layer mask, okay? So always make sure that you're working on the layer mask when you go in to like define the edges, okay? So give yourself a paintbrush, give it, a decently hard edge, And a reminder, anything that you want to disappear, you will make black. Anything that you want to reappear or bring back detail, you're going to make it white. Okay, so using these colors down here, you can press the X button, X key, and it will toggle those colors back and forth for you, which is very useful when you're doing masks. Okay, so I can just go in, I can clean this up, clean up the edge, right? Give myself some white paint, bring that back. If I hold down the space bar, that gives me my hand to like navigate the canvas around, right? Give a little bit more of this foot. Boom. Okay. Now, I have gotten rid of all the shadows, which is fine because we will add those back in our composite. But if you wanted to maintain the shadows, that's your choice, okay? So it's about making things feel realistic and real, but also match your sensibility, okay? Oops. You're gonna get really used to using Control Z, which is undo, right? It's like the magic little thing that we wish sometimes we had it in real life. Undo, undo, undo. Okay. So that's our update to the layer mask. Okay. So that works for me. So now what I want to do is right now, all of these, like everything in this layer is on the same layer, right? But I just want to change the fabric, the upholstery of this couch. I don't want to change the wood of the legs. So what I have to do is separate those, okay? Couple ways to do it. What I would do, easiest way, I would just make a layer, make a copy of this layer using the existing layer mask. So just select the layer and hit Apple J or Control J. Now we have an orange couch copy, okay? Then you can go in and let's turn the orange couch off, okay? Let's go in with our paintbrush again. Let's make sure that we are on our layer mask. And let's just get rid, oops, again, make sure you're on the layer mask. Let's just get rid of the legs, okay? Yeah, paint them out. Use whatever tool. If you want to hit select and do it with a selection tool, you can do it that way. If you want to freehand it, like I am, go for it. Nice part with layer masks is they're not really that permanent. You can always go in and bring back what you need to. Okay, so that feels good. And then here, let's go in closer. And we're just gonna get rid of these feet. Okay, boop. And this guy. Easy peasy. Okay, love it. So now I have just the fabric. If I turn this layer that's underneath of it on, the feet show back up. In fact, the whole image shows back up, okay? But for now, we'll just have that as the feet, okay? So I'm gonna actually rename this legs, and then I'm gonna just call this, we'll call this couch upholstery, okay? So Does anybody remember what this little circle is without hovering over it? Anybody? The little circle at the bottom? That's your adjustment layers, right? So to change the color of our upholstery, we're going to use adjustment layers. I'm going to turn the legs off so we don't get confused. I'm going to hit hue saturation. And what this is going to do is, the best way that I can explain it, if we remember Photoshop, the day one, we talked about Photoshop being like layers of glass, right? Everything that's a checkerboard is like completely see-through layers of glass. An adjustment layer is as if you're putting something on that glass, but it's like translucent, okay? So if we work with hue saturation, picture that you've taken like some of that cellophane, like that colored cellophane gift wrap from like a fruit basket. I don't know how many of you get fruit baskets in your life, but you know, that's like the best way I can explain it, is you take that sort of a colored gel or a colored piece of translucent plastic, and you're putting that on the top layer. So anything that is under that cellophane is going to turn that color, right? So if we need to isolate that, we can do that using groups. So first, let's give ourselves some colored cellophane, okay? We'll do that. Again, we've got our hue saturation, and I'll go up here and I can use my slider up and down, and we can see it subtly changing, okay? I can be really dramatic and bring the saturation way up, but that's where it starts to get cuckoos. Like, that's not good, okay? We don't like this super pixelated look unless you're like designing upholstery and like that's the look you're going for, okay? But like that's not, you wouldn't be doing that. And if you were, you'd probably make a fabric and blah, 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 okay? So instead of having like it only, you know, half-ass changing, let's use this option called colorize. Now what that's going to do is that's going to give all the pixels permission to change within context of each other, okay? So it's going to say like, oh, the shadows, you can come along with us and you can also change color. You're not going to try your best to stay as true to the original as possible, okay? So then I can really play with the color, okay? So I know today we said we're going to commit to an orangey color. I don't know why I said that, but that's okay. It's more of brown. Let's bring our saturation up. There we go. Cool. I have this vision of this like very 70s room in my head right now, so that's where we're gonna run with it. Okay? So if I play with my lightness, you can do this a couple degrees left and right, but I find what it does is it lightens like all the pixels. So if I go in, like even the piping, that's going to sort of become washed out and it's going to start to look unrealistic. So there's better ways to keep your, do your contrast or your lightness. So just sort of keep your lightness within a few degrees of what it was, okay? But play with that, colorize as much as you want, okay? And just for fun, let's turn our legs back on. Oh my God, they're orange. We don't want them orange. What the heck? Okay? That's where we talk about making it into a group. Okay? So I'm going to take my couch upholstery and I'm going to shift and I'm going to click the layer, adjustment layer. Okay? Now I can make a group using the little folder or Control G or Apple G. And I'm going to go up to this little menu. Okay, so we're going to use this a little bit more today. This is called a blending mode. If you remember, I want this to just be normal. And what that's going to do is it's going to return everything to as it is. Okay, so group 2. There's the upholstery. We'll call this upholstery. Okay. So we've got our upholstery. We've got our legs on their own layer. I turn that off. We've got our original visible. Okay. So now I have this orange couch. As always, let's save our work. So we can, if we haven't saved it yet, we can Apple Shift S to give us a save as dialog so that we can bring it into our library, right? Since I already have this saved, I can just Apple S or just hit save, okay? So now what that'll do is it'll remember like all the changes that you've made and you can bring them into the new document, okay? One thing I want you guys to note, if you don't want like massive files, you can work with what's called a PNG. And that is when we export we can export it as a PNG. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to maintain this invisible background, okay? If I export this as a JPEG, you will always get a white background unless you have like a black background, but it will never preserve the transparency, okay? So I just want you guys to note that if you are, you don't want to have like 17 PSD files within like your mood board because it slows the computer down, export as a PNG, and that will give you your invisible backgrounds, but it'll allow it to be like committed as the pixels while keeping your Photoshop file in the background, okay? So I'm gonna just export that. And again, if you can't do the syncing on your computer, just upload it to your OneDrive into like a Photoshop folder, and then that way you can access it from any computer, okay? So I'm not gonna worry about that. So now let's bring this couch into this room because I know that's what we've all been waiting for. So there's a couple ways to do it. I can drag it from this document into the other one, or I can place it. Don't get too hung up on whether you embedded or linked. One just means that it's referencing the original file. Embedded means it's like making a copy of the pixels, okay? So I'm just gonna place embedded because that's just what I like to do. And I'm gonna go to my working files, and let's bring our orange couch into the room. Okay, so on import, I'll always get what's called a bounding box, okay? These are your toggle points, and when you drag them, you can make your image larger or smaller, okay? So this function is actually called transform. And because we've started our space planning classes, we're gonna know that we don't just shove a couch like up against a wall, right? We wanna give it room, let's give it space within the room, okay? We can imagine that there's a little bit of walkway behind this between the wall and the edge of this couch. I'll hit enter. And that looks good, okay? So, great. Let's bring another object in and I'll show you how to change the perspective of that item using transform, okay? So, let's bring in, let's bring in a rug. Okay, I'm gonna bring in my little tiger rug. And again, we've transformed them. And you can sort of just get it like rough of where you want it on import, but like that's not a believable angle, right? Like it's actually not bad. But what I would prefer is to go to edit, and I'm going to use this transform. Free transform is like exactly what it sounds like. It's a free-for-all. Whatever corner you drag, it doesn't maintain its scale. It just like you can stretch it or squish it or whatever. If I use any of these, they're going to change exactly what it says. We're going to skew it, distort it, rotate it. I'm going to do a perspective transform. Now what this will do is anytime I drag these corners, instead of just scaling it and make it bigger, I'll show you. It's going to change the perspective of it, right? So this is very helpful if you are working with like, let's say you've got like a pencil rendering that you've done like flat on your paper, and you take a picture of it and you want to do a digital elevation on like your drawn sketch. This is great because you can use all your lines as like your transform guides and your perspective lines, and it's all built in for you. Okay. Also great if you're doing a digital rendering, obviously, right? We would use like the sides of the floor or the walls, or if there's cabinetry or something, those would sort of indicate where your perspective needs to be. Okay. So I'm going to just drag this guy. Boom. Okay. I don't think it's exactly the right scale, but good enough. Okay. So that's that. Let's take 10 because I know that was a lot. Let's come back at 7 o'clock and we'll continue working within the room, and it's going to come together really fast. Okay. So again, it's just about like practicing and using these skills over and over and over until you get good at them. Okay. There's no shortcuts. Okay. See you in 10 minutes.